Welcome to March and welcome to the 700th consecutive day of being national champions. You're locked on UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I wanted to come up to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate all of your support, especially my everydayers. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn men's and women's basketball programs, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show our gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. Special shout out again to my everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Okay. Wanted to set the record straight here on something. Over the last few days, I've had a few people kind of get into my mentions and kind of act as if there's some kind of agenda. I rarely have done any lobbying or saying that one guy should start over the other, because to be honest with you, regardless of what I say on this podcast, Dan Hurley is going to do and should do whatever he wants, because he is as I mentioned, 700th consecutive day being a national champion. Shout out to Brian Frederick for sending me that message this morning. I really appreciate that. It's a really good perspective for anybody that's frustrated about this year. But I've never been one to tear down players at all. Like, in fact, I've been accused of the opposite, being too much of a UConn supporter, too much of a believer in this team and its players, glazing, whatever, all the different euphemisms, some things I can't say on air, and yet somehow making one seemingly logical statement about why Tarris Reed should start over Samson Johnson has turned into having an agenda, or essentially just kind of being pro-Tarris and anti-Samson Johnson. In fact, what's so funny is I haven't really met too many of the players, and as I was leaving the St. John's game, a game that we lost, I saw Samson walking towards me out of the tunnel, and I walked up to him, I shook his hand, and I said, "Hey man, good luck the rest of the season." And he said, "Thank you, sir," and just walked away. And obviously, I have nothing personal against Samson. I think he is a warrior, as Dan has said. I think he tries almost too hard to please us dummies in the media and fans alike. But it's wild in how some social media works. To put this into perspective, how insane things have gotten to a certain extent, because I'm small potatoes in terms of like larger shows and everything that comes with it. But I've literally had some internet cyber stalking. A guy that posted pictures of my kids on Instagram because he thinks I'm too much of a homer, and was sending messages to my family, my wife, all this different stuff. It's both disturbing and absurd, but goes to show how ridiculous people can get over what is ultimately just a basketball conversation. So let me be as clear as possible. I want Samson Johnson to succeed. I want him to be the best player for UConn. I want UConn to reap the benefits of his talent. I've never said he's a bad player, far from it. The farthest I've gone is I texted Dan Meehan off air and said he's almost unplayable at the moment because his confidence is lost. But that's not because he's a bad player. It's because he's just not playing to the level he was earlier in the season. And there's plenty of games, I'm going to talk about him right now, where I've been incredibly impressed with him against Baylor, Texas, Butler, Xavier, Marquette. I thought he showed real flashes. His scoring, he's still second in the nation in field goal percentage. His shot blocking has been elevated. He has length, he has mobility. But one thing he has consistently lacked is rebounding, and he fouls too much. This is not a slight. These are just facts. And now when you go to Tarris, making an enormous impact on the glass, blocking more shots or the same, and also scoring efficiently, it simply makes sense to make the move. Maybe the timing is off, and that is totally fair. If you're Dan Hurley and you're like, listen, we can't make this move right now. If this was midseason, yeah, we could do it. If this was the third game of the year and he is just leaps and bounds ahead of Samson, yes, that is totally fine. And in fact, that's why I'm not like banging on the table being like, he has to start or else UConn season is doomed. That's not the case. I'm even okay with Tarris coming off the bench, but the recent trends in these games kind of speak for themselves, right? Some of them are nonsensical, right? Villanova game, we all know that UConn got down big, but they got down big a lot while Tarris was on the floor. UConn was down 4-3 when Tarris checked in at 15:39 mark of the game. Nothing drastic, but they eventually got down, I think they got down by 12 in the first half and then 14 eventually in the game. In the St. John's game, pardon me, UConn was up 11-8 when Tarris checked in. Samson was actually more effective early, which shows this isn't as simple as who starts versus who sits. Georgetown, the Hoyas jumped out to a 14-4 lead before UConn started to turn it on, cutting it to 16-14 right before Tarris subbed in. This one was like 50-50. But then the Providence game, you really kind of saw where Tarris's impact is so much greater than Samson's at this point. Samson got yanked just 53 seconds into the game after a missed assignment, a solo ball foul that turned into a solo ball foul, and allowing an offensive rebound that lets you 2 free throws. In comes Tarris, and the game shifts. They're down 4-0, and he dominates the entire game. 24 points, 18 rebounds, 6 blocks. This is not about tearing Samson down. It's about finding the best possible rotation for a team to succeed. In fact, the reasoning for wanting Tarris to start has nothing to do with benching Samson for lack of effectiveness. It's about unburdening him so that he can come in for those 3 to 4 minute stretches, if not shorter, and play with more freedom to foul, freedom to, play, maybe he gets away with a couple calls finally because he's not constantly, attacking the players on these hedge screens. That's another thing. And I don't have video to support this, but when you're playing, when you're attacking the hedge on these screens and not playing drop coverage like they did with Klingon last year, Samson gets so overly aggressive and he trusts his speed to get back. But the problem is he's built very slender. I'm probably almost the same weight as Samson Johnson. I'm 215 pounds. What's Samson, 230 at 6'10"? So the idea that he doesn't have a wide enough base sometimes where he plays a guy that outweighs him when he's recovering and getting back on defense, he kind of gets lost in the shuffle and gets out of position for rebounds. Happens all the time. Gets out of position. Then he has to make up for it by fouling. Does he get a bad whistle? 1,000%, but he causes a lot of his own problems. At the end of the day, this is just about what's best for UConn in March. We know this team has a real chance to make some noise now, but they need to solidify this identity. And if Samson continues to thrive in a more limited, high-energy role, Tarris can anchor the starting unit. He is the slump buster. I've said that for about a month now, that I felt like they've been wanting Tarris to be this, and he finally is kind of crossing that threshold. UConn could get the best of both worlds of this. I'm giving you the Shane Gillis look, like, come on. It's not an agenda. It's just basketball. In the beginning, I thought Samson was doing an amazing job as a starting center, and I thought Tarris was doing a great job to complement them. We talked about how they were getting the same numbers that they got from last year's center position, and Dan has said it in a press conference. This team is not going to lose this year because of the center position, and he's right on that. But can they negate some of the things that have gone on with the backcourt, missed on roster construction, by allowing a guy like Tarris, who is obviously a much more talented player than we even thought, to then thrive and kind of take away some of the everyone has warts, but we can cover up those warts over there with a dominant center that we found here in Tarris Reed in the transfer portal. So that's my thought process behind this. It's not wrong. It's not right. You're not right if you think that things should be the same. That's not a shot, but that's definitely aimed at my buddy Chris Smith, and that's just about anything. Like I joke around, like I got my presidents are temporary, Wu-Tang is forever. If something is based in fact, like if you said to me, Samson Johnson had a better game than Tarris Reed in the Providence game, I could say, actually, no, he didn't, because I respect your opinion. I think it's stupid, but he had 3 points and 2 rebounds, and Tarris had 24 points, 18 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Those numbers support those facts because that's just undeniable. But if you just think that they should go in a different direction because you feel like it would make sense for the team overall, that's an opinion, and it's not based in anything other than what you're seeing, and you're using some metrics to support your theory. But you're not wrong if you believe that. You're also not wrong if you believe that Samson should continue starting, and don't mess with what's turning into kind of a nice mix of Samson starts, then Tarris comes in and gives you a pop. If that's what they go with the rest of the year, and he keeps doing what he's doing, I don't care. Just wanted to set the record straight. This is an agenda. This is just, I think Tarris is a better player. Simple as that. End of story. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. I feel like UConn has got a March swagger back. A lot of it has to do with Tarris Reed, and their seed could be climbing. We're going to talk about that and more after the break. What's up, Locked On UConn fans? Ever wish you could directly support your favorite UConn athletes and be a part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes and in schools representing UConn. With Roy, you can get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, get exclusive context straight from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of UConn sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing UConn athletes that way that they deserve, and with the transparency and trust and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading the Roy app and supporting your favorite players. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. There's something about UConn in March, right? Every year, no matter the circumstances, no matter the ups and downs of the season, this program flips a switch when the stakes get higher. And that's exactly what we saw on Saturday. UConn rolled into Providence, handled business, beat up the Friars 75-63. It was a lot worse than that. Dan kind of called off the dogs, let the oldest walk-ons in history come in the game, and it was good. It was a good moment for them. The Huskies won their second straight game, and it came at absolutely a perfect time. They'd been yo-yoing back and forth between wins and losses, with Selection Sunday just 2 weeks away, and UConn currently projected. I've seen 8 seed. I haven't seen too many 9 seeds out there, which is a good thing, starting to kind of flip that narrative, that momentum. The most important thing right now is momentum. And this weekend was an indication the Huskies are starting to find it, right? I hope everyone had a fantastic weekend watching the Huskies and spending time with their family. I know Alex Karaban, the only returning starter from both championship teams, made it clear that UConn is looking in the right, or is peaking at the right time after the win. He said the past is the past. We can't let previous losses affect us or previous wins define us. We've got to continue to gain momentum, and really, as long as you're playing for your best basketball in March and April, then anything can happen. And he is 100% right. I also heard him on our buddy Jared Kotler's Connecticut Scoreboard podcast talk about how once they get into the tournament, they've already been, for the most part, most of the guys there have played in the biggest game there is possible. I know you're going to say, well, Jalen Stewart, Solo Ball, those guys didn't play in the run to the title last year, but they're there. They've been involved in this. They know the pressure. Alex has played in the biggest games twice. Samson was in the biggest game last year. Once the tournament starts, the pressure isn't on UConn anymore. If they go into this season, this tournament as a 8 seed, 7 seed, 6 seed, whatever it ends up being, they are they're playing with house money, 1,000%. Because nobody thinks they're going to make the Final Four. None. In fact, I would imagine there's going to be plenty of people that think they may lose in the first round. So, there's going to be us in the UConn side that think that obviously they can make a run. But I think the part of that is they've been there before. How are they playing right now? They're playing well. And right now, Tarris Reed Jr. just had the best game of his career. Everyone's been saying this, myself included, that he reminded us of kind of like a baby Adama Sanogo. And baby is a small word because the guy is 6'10", whereas Adama is more 6'8", 6'9". He's a freaking house. Like, he's a monster. Tarris Reed's breakout game, absolute shades of Sanogo. And when you go back and watch the tape of Tarris Reed's 24-point, 18 rebounds, 6 block performance against Tarris, you will see shades of Adama. It was a the kind of dominant performance inside and out that made Sanogo the Final Four most outstanding player in 2023. Alex himself acknowledged similarities, saying, you definitely saw flashes of Adama for sure. The offensive rebounds, the tough finishes, being physical, the block shots. I think that's always something underrated about Dama. But yeah, there was definitely some Dama in there. Minus the threes. We're not letting Tarris shoot threes, not yet. I would imagine Tarris probably could shoot threes. He has a pretty good stroke. Reed's performance wasn't just about the numbers. It was about impact. Every time Providence tried to make a run, he was there to clean up the glass, get a second chance bucket, or swat a shot at the rim. And this wasn't just a one-game thing. He's done this 4 straight games now. Maybe not 24 and 18, but been on the come up for a team that needs rebounding and toughness. This changes everything. It just does. And I know that we're tired of hearing, well, that game could be the moment, but this one feels different because you're getting the type of game you're getting from Tarris. It wasn't like Solo had 27 points and made 10 threes. That would make sense because that would be 30 points, but he had 30 and made 10 threes, because the bigger picture is this is what's going to shape this team's postseason hopes is Tarris Reed and everybody else. Alex played better. He made some shots, made a really nice 3-pointer, had a tough and one that Dan Hurley celebrated with him. And I love the way this team is playing right now. It was a stress-free game, much like the Georgetown game, and that's the type of game that you want to play against, mid-tier competition in Georgetown and Providence. Georgetown a little better than Providence, but still, both those teams are game because they're UConn rivals. So, and the reason why I started the show with kind of setting the record straight is because that the whole idea of Tarris starting, like that's the reason why, is because Samson has kind of waned and Tarris has made this meteoric rise. So, I think Sam's had a great season so far in terms of, beginning of the season, mid-season, he's starting to struggle a little bit here. But it doesn't matter who starts, probably not. But the trend is undeniable. Over the last 4 games, UConn has looked better and more in control when Reed is on the floor. So the question is, can this momentum keep rolling? I think the answer to that question is yes. If UConn wins out and improves its seeding, say jumps to a 6 or a 7 seed, then this team is a real problem in March. If they stay in the 8-9 range, it gets a little trickier, a little squirrelier, because that means you're probably playing a 1 seed if you get past that first round in your second round matchup. But here's the thing. We said it before. This is UConn. We've seen 7 seeds in 2014 make runs. We've seen 4 seeds make runs in 2011. There were a 3 or 4. I think there were a 3. The blueprint is there. They just need to keep building momentum like they have the past 2 games. And if Tarris Reed keeps playing like this, UConn is a very, very dangerous team. You're locked on. We'll be back. When the game tips off and the NBA action is just getting started, there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot, $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. So two straight wins. Where it's a Monday, so where everyone's thinking, are they going to be ranked in the top 25? Let's be real. The AP poll is mostly a talking point at this point, something for fans to argue about on Twitter, something for TV networks to flash across the screen to build up matchups. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean much. If you look at Evan Maya or evanmia.com, they're the 25th ranked team in the country. If you let's look at where they're at in the net. I actually didn't even look that up, but let's do it now while I have you guys. Let's see. UConn is 35. Blah, blah, blah. Ken Pom. Let's see. UConn, 36. 25 by Evan. But here's the thing. Is Gonzaga ranked? Gonzaga is number 8 in Ken Pom. That's a team we beat by double digits on the in a neutral site. Sometimes I look at some of these numbers, and it's why I have such an issue with analytics at times. I love them and I hate them at the same time. Baylor, a team that we beat at home, is 30th. Let's see where Texas is. Texas 51, not so good. But yeah, I mean, like there's all of these teams. Does anyone really believe that if UConn played St. Mary's in a second round game, that St. Mary's is the 20th ranked team in the country and UConn is the 36th? Does anyone really believe that UC San Diego, who is going to get some votes and probably is going to end up being the top 25, that's 26-4, is a better team than UConn right now? I'm asking these questions. I don't know the answer to them because I've never seen. I would have to see the matchup based. I actually have to see them play. But I can tell you right now, Michigan is as schizophrenic as any team I've ever seen, and they're 29th. They're ahead of UConn, and they're highly ranked in the AP poll. They just got killed by Illinois, who lost by 50 to Duke, but Michigan plays really well from time to time. What that tells you is Kansas, who's number 21 in Ken Pom, should be number 101 in Ken Pom because they're a terrible basketball team. They just are. Yet Bill Self having to put out a statement because Jeff Goodman made a comment about that he could see Bill Self retiring. And I believe my buddy Adam Zagoria got the story and essentially said, is that true? And he gave him a flat out no. Of course it's not true. So just a guy out there that has a lot of clout that just decided to throw some spaghetti on the wall and see if it could stick, and it was wrong. Self-proclaimed journalist gone wrong, and then on top of it, he puts out a statement, and then you saw these awful tweets that people were sending out to like Zeke Mayo and other Kansas players. College basketball, the rankings are a mess. So you know what I wanted to do today? I wanted to break down our buddy David Borges's top 25 because this is a guy who I believe, at the minimum, is thoughtful, writes a great article, has been a fantastic journalist for covering UConn for almost 20 years. Is a far more interesting look at the AP poll than the meaningless AP poll from writers across the country who don't give a rip about not only UConn, but just in general, the sport as a whole. So, after beating Georgetown and Providence at home, Borges did put UConn back in his top 25. They weren't exactly resume-changing wins, is what he wrote in his article, but Georgetown is under 500 in the Big East, and it was missing Thomas Sorver. Providence was also without Bryce Hopkins. So on paper, nothing about these wins alone should have vaulted UConn back into the ranked position. But there was one reason why Borges put them back in: Tarris Reed Jr. And if you listen to this show all season, you know that one of UConn's biggest weaknesses has been rebounding and interior physicality. And if you've been watching over the last week, you know that Tarris Reed just changed that equation. So Borges made it clear in his piece he believes Reed is the missing piece to UConn's puzzle that has dogged them for part of the season. That's a quote from him, and he's right. Reed doesn't have to put up 24, 18, and 6 every night, but if he can be consistent in that physical presence, it completely changes how this team operates. So how does UConn compare to the rest of the top 25? Looking at Borges' full ballot, a few things stand out. Auburn sits at number 1 with an average starting five age of 23.2 years old. Basically an NBA G League team in terms of experience. Duke's Isaiah Evans is filling in for Tyrese Proctor, is shooting 45.3% from three as a freshman, an elite shooter at a high level. He's also 6'7". He's a long, athletic kid, built like a string bean, kind of looks like a smaller version of who's the kid that played for them, now plays for the Pelicans? Brandon Ingram. Another Charlotte kid. Isaiah's from Charlotte, Mecklenburg County area. And I think Ingram was from not there. I'll think about it in a second. Tennessee gets a bump for beating Alabama at the buzzer in Knoxville. And Marquette, a team that's in the mix for third place in the Big East, has a huge game this week coming up at Gamble. Obviously, I will be there. I'm super excited about it. But the biggest takeaway for UConn fans, Borges is acknowledging the shift. He isn't ranking UConn just based on wins and losses alone. He's looking at what they are now. He sees that with Reed's emergence, this team's identity is shifting, right? He's basically asking that same question. Can this be the answer? And he absolutely could. Let's look at his rankings, though, from the rest of the way. I think right now, every bracketologist has us as an 8 seed, which is a good thing because there was an 8-9 kind of split. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think they should, clearly. So you have Auburn 1. This is Borges' top 25. Auburn 1, Duke 2, Houston 3, Tennessee 4, Florida 5, Alabama 6, Michigan State 7, St. John's 8, Memphis 9, Clemson 10. Okay. Couple things I disagree with David. Not in the rankings. Rank how you want them. I could care less. I'll go back from 4th, from 10 down. I love that he ranks Memphis higher because Memphis has played a really solid year so far, and they're just not getting the credit they deserve because they're in the American. They're 24-5. This is a record that I believe UConn probably should have if they didn't, throw away the Seton Hall game, if they didn't throw away a couple games in Maui, including one against Memphis. But you are who you are. You're 20-8, and you're 12-6 or 12-6 in the Big East. Memphis at 9. I don't have an issue with that. The comment that David wrote about Clemson, maybe the ACC has more good teams than people think. That's not true. The ACC has as many good teams as you would think. They have 2 very good teams, one great team in Duke, one just under that in Clemson. I know Clemson beat them at home, and they have a couple of pretenders, and is what I would call them. Like guys who I think Pat Kelsey's a fantastic coach. Might wear some really tight t-shirts because he's trying to show those muscles out, but that's okay. I went through a phase like that. I think he's younger than me. So I think Pat Kelsey has done a great job with Louisville with what they have, and they lost a bunch of guys. So definitely, in my opinion, probably national coach of the year, but they're a top 30 team. They're just because they're having a good year in the ACC. The ACC is so down. You can't, that's a huge league. It's a 16, 18 team league, 18 teams. And I believe the majority of those teams are either a quad 2 or a quad 3 game. I don't, I'm not taking anything away from Clemson, not taking anything away from Duke. They're handling their business. Same with Louisville. But those 3 teams are it. I think Wake Forest, my buddy Steve Forbes on there, great person, great guy. He's doing an amazing job there because that Wake Forest program was essentially left for dead when Danny Manning kind of put it there. And he's made a resurgence for them, but they're just not getting over the hump in a down ACC league. And I wish them the best. I just don't think they're not an NCAA tournament team. North Carolina, they're terrible. That's a terrible team. There's not good teams. Then you go St. John's. I would have St. John's higher. I'd have them ahead of Michigan State, but maybe Alabama. So then you have Michigan State at 7. The Trey Holloway 60-foot buzzer beater versus Maryland was still 15 feet shorter than Jalen Adams' legendary shot. Gotta love Borges giving UConn some love there. Tennessee's buzzer beater over Alabama. My wife is a UT fan, so she went crazy. I was happy for her, and it just looked cool. If you look at that game, go back and watch the replay. Look at Rick Barnes pissed off because him and Zakai Ziegler were trying to call timeout when what's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Meshack. As Meshack is rising to fire, you can see it. And then obviously the shot goes in and he's they both go crazy. Rick Barnes a little less, but it would have been so wild if they gave him a timeout and that ball's in the air and it goes in and everyone goes crazy and they're like, no basket. The basketball gods were with the Volunteers in Knoxville that night. Houston. Whew. If they stay healthy, Houston is absolutely going to be a sleeper to win a national title. And it's not because of how physical they are. It definitely helps. But they got guys who can score. They have really good three-point shooting. They have guys that excel in the mid-range. It would be like if you gave me if we put UConn and St. John's together, that's who I think Houston is. And what I mean by that is you give St. John's solo ball and you get them Alex Karaban, 2 guys who can shoot it from deep, on top of the fact that they have the physicality that they have. and that's a national title contender. And I think as long as Houston keeps shooting at the clip that they're shooting at, teams just aren't ready for the type of physicality that they face against Houston. My buddy Wes in Cincinnati got out to a 10-2 lead against Houston and really kind of brought the energy. But they got humbled real fast because Houston it's just that good. And it's a really phenomenal team. They grind you on defense. They can shoot the three. Kelvin Sampson has a drill where they essentially have to run sprints when they turn the ball over, because he tells his team that as long as you shoot a ball, they have an opportunity to get an offensive rebound. Their second best offense is offensive rebounding, and they maul you and they get their offensive rebounds, and they dare officials to call fouls, and they don't. And it's just that's their MO. To me, they're the third best team in the country right now. They might be the best team in the country when it's all said and done. Duke is just doing what Duke should do. They're playing in a really crappy league. They're basically a mid-major. They're basically the best team in a mid-major conference that should 100% beat the teams that they play. But they're also doing it in convincing fashion. So put aside your Duke hate for a second and say, you got to give John Shire a lot of credit here. They have all freshmen contributing. They even had some kids who didn't even play come in and contribute in the last game. I think he's get a good mixture of kind of freedom of movement, but also I see that earlier in the year I did not see them running a lot of sets. They do more of that now. They do a lot of they do things to get Con Knipple wide open threes. They do things in pick and roll that allow Kaylan Malawash to get to the rim as a rim runner, as a full 7'2". They're also just a team. So when all things break down, they can get buckets. And that's why Duke is a formidable team. I could see them winning a national championship. I could also see them losing in the Sweet 16 or the second round, because it's just been a while since a freshman run team has won a national championship. Let's just be honest, right? And then you do the flip side. Auburn, their average starting five is 23.2 years old. They are like as old as the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I watched last night, play against Steph Castle, and Castle had a monster game. But their average player on their team is 24 years old. So Auburn's like a semi-professional basketball team. They all are, but they are like to another level. And I think Auburn's the best team in the country right now. So, but yeah, David Borges, keep it up, man. I love reading Borges. I think he's fantastic. He also had a nice quip about Gene Hackman, passed away recently. Shout out to Gene, one of my favorite actors, but also one of the best coaches in acting, right? Not only was he the great, why am I going to forget his name in Hoosiers? Norman Dale, the great Norman Dale from Hoosiers. He was also, won't remember this name. He also played a football coach in Replacements. Like, if you needed a guy to play a coach, was there a better guy than Gene Hackman? Just in general, like just the aura. He was a bigger guy. He was a Marine. He had a physical presence about him. But I recently saw an article, an Instagram reel about, it was inside the actor's studio, right? And the host asked him about, I guess, like his dad left like randomly, just like it's an awful thing, right? Obviously I think I could never leave my children, right? It's, he said it was just a casual, he was playing with some buddies and his dad just went, see you later. And he did see him later in life, but that's just, and it broke him down. Like, and he said, I still use that. He's like, it's only been 65 years since that happened. So I hope if that was foul play, they figure out what the hell happened there. But tribute to Gene Hackman, the great Norman Dale Hoosiers actor, but also just a seemingly wonderful person. It's March, guys. It's time for basketball. You guys have been a phenomenal audience. I thank my lucky stars to get to do this every day. And this is the 1-year anniversary, March 3rd. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Stay locked in and go Huskies.
Go Huskies.